John Durham, then U.S. Attorney for Connecticut, in 2018 official portrait. U.S. Department of Justice via AP Washington, a lawyer for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign who was charged in 2021 by special counsel John Durham with lying to the FBI during a 2016 meeting asked a judge on Thursday to dismiss the indictment, calling it a case of extraordinary prosecutorial overreach. Lawyers for Michael Sussman said that if the indictment were allowed to proceed, it would risk criminalizing ordinary conduct, raise First Amendment concerns, dissuade honest citizens from coming forward with tips, and chill the advocacy of lawyers who interact with the government. Durham was tasked in 2019 by then Attorney General William Barr with investigating potential government misconduct during the early days of the investigation into potential coordination between Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and Russia. He was given the title of special counsel in 2020, in the final weeks of the Trump administration, to ensure that he could continue his work once Joe Biden became president. Sussman is accused of lying to the FBI's then general counsel during a September 2016 meeting in which he relayed concerns from cybersecurity researchers about potentially suspicious internet data involving a Russia-based bank and the Trump Organization. Prosecutors say Sussman misled the FBI by saying during the meeting that he was not acting on behalf of a particular client but was actually representing the interests of the Clinton campaign and a technology executive who had furnished Sussman with the data, from so-called domain name system data lookups and analysis. Sussman legal team says allowing the indictment to stand would mean that people could be prosecuted for giving an accurate tip to law enforcement if they weren't upfront about their motivation. The FBI investigated and ruled out within months the possibility of a secret digital backchannel between servers of the Trump Organization and of Russia-based Alfa Bank, a claim that, if true, could have signaled contact between the Trump orbit and Russia at a time when the FBI was already trying to determine if there was such a connection. The indictment does not charge Sussman with giving the FBI false information about that matter, but rather about what his lawyers dismissively described as an ancillary issue, who his legal clients were at the time of the meeting. Sussman's lawyers say he did not lie, but even if he misled the FBI, there is no evidence that the false statement he's alleged to have made is material to the case or affected the Bureau's decision to investigate any potential connection between Trump and Alfa Bank. They say allowing the indictment to stand would mean that people could be prosecuted for giving an accurate tip to law enforcement if they weren't upfront about their motivation for doing so. So, a jilted ex-wife would think twice about reporting her ex-husband's extensive gun smuggling operation lest the FBI later decide to prosecute her for failing to disclose her motivation for turning him in, the motion states. If would-be tipsters or sources fear that an incomplete disclosure will subject them to criminal liability, the FBI would be seriously weakened in its ability to gather information from the public and recruit and maintain confidential human sources. There was no content. A wiretap is when you're intercepting content. Frank Figliuzzi, former FBI assistant director. The motion to dismiss comes just days after a filing by Durham that created an uproar and was mischaracterized in some media reports, and by Trump and close allies, as having suggested that the former president had been illegally spied on by allies of the Clinton campaign, even though that was not what the document said. Durham, the New York Times reported Friday, distanced himself on Thursday from the heated reaction in the pro-Trump media to his latest filing. If third parties or members of the media have overstated, understated or otherwise misinterpreted facts contained in the government's motion, that does not in any way undermine the valid reasons for the government's inclusion of this information, Durham wrote in a new court pleading, the Times reported. Durham also implicitly acknowledged that the White House-linked data lookups in question had occurred during the Obama, and not the Trump, administration, the Times observed. The earlier Durham filing said the company of the tech executive with whom Sussman had worked, Rodney Joffe, had helped maintain servers for the White House and said he and cybersecurity researchers he was working with had mined internet traffic for the purpose of gathering derogatory information about Trump. A spokesman for Joffe said he was an apolitical internet security expert who had never worked for a political party and was operating under a contract to identify potential cyber breaches or threats against the federal government. During the course of the work, according to the spokesman, the researchers identified what they thought were concerning anomalies related to Russian-made phones in proximity to the Trump campaign and the White House and prepared a report of their findings that was subsequently shared with the CIA. The White House data that was analyzed was from the time that Barack Obama, not Trump, was president, undercutting the idea that Trump was spied on while in office. National security expert and former FBI Assistant Director Frank Figliuzzi, in an MSNBC interview, noted that claims in the agenda-driven media and by Trump allies that Durham's filing last Friday had added weight to a long-standing Trump claim of having been wiretapped had in no way been validated. There was no content, Figliuzzi said. A wiretap is when you're intercepting content. From the archives, Spicer says Trump's wiretap claim wasn't meant to be literal. MarketWatch contributed.